chicka. Yeah, what's good, everybody? Welcome out, Habari Ghani. Happy Kwanzaa, holidays, all that stuff. Welcome out. This is Black Power Media, and right now, BPM is getting everything cleaned up, getting everything tightened up, and we coming right back at you strong, January 4th. That's right. So to keep y'all watching something good, we was like, let's play some specials and some reruns. So that's what we're gonna do this morning. We're gonna go and take it to one of our specials when we had Cornell West on the show. So like, subscribe, tell a friend to tell a friend. It's on again. It's Black Power Media Remix Morning Show, y'all. Let's get it. All right.
What's happening? Jed, I think you muted, brother.
I am muted. I am. Listen, welcome back, everybody. We have a very special extended edition of the Remix Morning Show, Black Power Media exclusive special. He doesn't need any real introduction. I'm sure everybody is very well aware of who our next guest is. He has been around for many years as a leader, as a spokesperson, as an activist, as an author, as a scholar. And I would just want to add to my own particular introduction, what I have, even where I think it's important to point out, and I'm sure we'll all end up talking about, there are political disagreements. I have always appreciated and was in fact not personally, but introduced to the work of Cornell West through his engagement with people to his political left, namely Dr. John Henrik Clarke. So I've always appreciated that no matter where we see Dr. West, he is one of those who is willing to communicate and be in discussion, even if necessary disagreement with people on his left, which I think is essential and something that I just wanted to acknowledge publicly before we bring him up and welcome him to our show here in our channel, Dr. Cornell West. Welcome, sir. Good morning.
Oh, what a blessing to be here. I salute each and every one of you. Can't wait to just be inspired and challenged, but I do want to say too that I appreciate your patience and shifting right in the middle of all of these boxes on the one hand, and then mom just died, and so I got a profound loss and grief at the same time. But I come out swinging. I'm bouncing back. But you all spirit keeping Black radical tradition alive. By Black radical tradition, I just mean truth telling and justice bearing and being willing to pay a price and bear a burden.
And right on, we thank you for that, by the way, and thank you for your willingness to come through. And again, our condolences to your loss and to that of your family. We appreciate that. Yeah,
appreciate it.
I see him trying to challenge Dr. West on the bookshelf thing. You know what I'm saying? He's got a little better bookshelf than I do, but I'm trying to work my way up to that.
You know what I want to do? I want to show y'all something because I just moved in just today. But you see this office right here? And you see this sign?
We see Mr.
Cone.
This is James Cone's office.
I was going to say, is that James Cone's office?
So you're around the way down here, huh?
He was here for 51 years. A great
wow.
Black liberation theology, my dear brother who I taught with for 40 years. And they left it open and they said, well, good God Almighty, I'm coming back to Union. Let me just be imbibed by his revolutionary spirit. And so I'm sitting right here looking at Harlem, getting ready to move to 110th Street in James Cone's office. And I want the world to know who James Cone was. That's right. Towering Black liberation theologian's book on Malcolm and Martin in 1991 is still worth reading. But I just mentioned that because this is my first day. And it's still, this is, you can see, I got my boxes and things, still working it out, but that's all right.
And we appreciate that. And it's something I know you appreciate. Like, I'm a heathen, but I even appreciated the cross and the lynching tree. And he said you can't understand Jesus if you don't understand the experience of Black people in the South in the United States. With lynching.
Exactly right.
And I appreciated his book on comparing Malcolm and Martin in terms of talking about them two standing side by side and where he thought there was a comparison and their contrast, and where he thought one was a little further ahead. Another might have disagreed on some of his internationals to talk about Malcolm not being as far as Martin, but that's another discussion. But it was a really great book and really great. Yeah, I was like, what are you talking about? Malcolm came out against the Vietnam War way before that, brother. But it was a great book. It was a great read.
I mean, I want to say definitely salute to you, because clearly we got different movers. We have total different movers, because we moved, the bookshelf ain't gonna be up the same damn day we get there. You know what I'm saying? Everything would have been in boxes. I would have been sitting on the box, everything. You know what I'm saying? So definitely we got a different pay grade. I'm trying to see how we can work together, brother.
No, I hear you. I hear you. I'm just upset that I don't have my Curtis Mayfield up here right away. Coltrane is coming, but I don't go nowhere without Curtis. You know what I mean? I know I heard Sister Kim talking about that rich music thing, but let's just be real about it. That music is at the center of our Black freedom struggle and who we are as a people.
So you said your music hasn't made it down there yet. Is that what you just said?
Well, just the pictures.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
So,
the music's already hit now.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
I read a story about about Prince saying that he was checking out something that you had said that Curtis he wasn't no Curtis Mayfield, and they were saying that his estate just actually put out his new album. Well, we put it out, Welcome to America, and he dedicated this song to you. Can you tell us about that?
For real?
Yeah, no, that's very real. No, Prince and I spent good time together. We were on a plane one time going to the Jazz Montreux show where he was performing. And he said, I heard you gave this lecture. And you said, I love my brother Prince. Prince is on my third album. Never forget, we did a song together. And I said, you a genius, you a giant, but you ain't no Curtis Mayfield, man. And he said, really? He said, yeah, but I didn't know. He went in the studio and did that Welcome to America album that's coming out next month. And Born to Die, he just dropped a few weeks ago. And I listened to it. I said, ooh, got a little Superfly vibe to it. Got a little Curtis Mayfield vibe to it.
Man, you've taken a lot of positions, Dr. West. You've said a lot of controversial things, but I think that might be the most gangster thing you've ever done. You're telling Prince to his face that he's no Curtis Mayfield.
He's a bad dude, man.
Are you crazy? You a bad dude right there. I was gonna say this.
Curtis Mayfield, right? I'm so proud when he's 15, the Gypsy Woman when he's 14, and he and Jerry Butler working on Precious Love at 19. And I mean, we can go on and on. We a winner 21. It's Choice of Colors when he's 20 and never won no Grammy, but Milli Vanilli won 2. Forget the Grammy. He's a giant. We don't live without Curtis Mayfield, man. You know what I mean?
No doubt.
New World Order
That's
with
deep.
Roger Troutman written it. He writes it being paralyzed from his neck down. Y'all know the story.
That's right.
And Roger come in with the computer love man, working together across generations. Curtis, a genius. Roger, great talent from Ohio, bringing the young and the old together. Curtis is just beyond description, man. You know, we won't get started on Curtis Mayfield, man. Lord have mercy. So that's what I meant with Prince. I told Prince, I say, brother, what were you doing at 14? How can you write I'm so proud when you're 14 years old? You don't even know what's going on. You don't know what love really is. Oh, really?
Shots fired.
Really? Oh, that's like Michael Jackson writing singing Who's Loving You by Smokey at 9. And Can You Remember by the Delphonics at 10. And you listen to both of those songs, you say, Michael, how do you know what love is all about? I don't know, but can you remember when we were babies? We were always together. I lost my voice when talking last night. But that's Michael. Curtis 14, that's our tradition. The Black musical tradition is the greatest modern tradition of artistic creativity, spiritual fortitude, moral courage in the modern world. Across the board, from Marley in Jamaica to Curtis in Chicago. And Marley's first group was Bob Marley and the Impressions. Y'all know that. He was imitating Curtis.
Surprised Prince didn't take off a boot and throw it at you, B. You know what I'm saying?
It's like that. Wilmington, Delaware. We spent 3 years in Wilmington, Delaware, and imitated every song was a cover of Curtis. Then went down and founded the Wailers. So, you know, and of course, Bob Marley's genius is beyond description too, but he understood who Curtis was. And when Curtis went to Howard University and plucked out who? Donny Hathaway.
Yeah.
Said, come work with me. Bring Brother Hudson too. They wrote together. But Hathaway is shaped by Curtis. And Curtis and Donny Hathaway wrote a song together called Suffering. Cold jam. But Curtis knew deep genius coming out of St. Louis. So this is our tradition. And as Black freedom fighters, if we could be as free, as truth-telling, as for real as the Al Greens and the Aretha Franklins and the Sarah Vaughan and the John Coltrane's and the Charlie Parkers, we would have been free a long time ago.
Hey, look here, Dr. West. The same thing you said, I told these cats the other day, but they ain't hear me. So I'm glad you came through and made it plain for us. Because my man Kamal over here, he's trying to dress like Prince the whole time. We weren't having it. So I'm glad that you came through. You know what I'm saying? Because I just couldn't get the rap out properly. You know what I'm saying?
I told Kim, I told you Dr. West don't know much about music. So I hope she's all right, because this is clearly a disappointing conversation so far. So she'd be all right though.
No, but it's a blessing to be with you all, though.
But I do. Can I ask one thing though?
You all are strong. You all are jazz-like in terms of being flexible on the one hand, but steadfast in your commitment to the freedom of Black people, the dignity of Black people, the majesty of Black people. That's what our musicians that they best are all about. I don't want to put any damper on the party so far, but there is a reason. I love the way you've described your move to Harlem, your return to Harlem in the legendary James Cone's office. But the reason for it is not necessarily a celebratory event. Yeah, that's true. When we talked about your struggles with Harvard, or their struggles with you and your politics, one of the things that came up in one of our conversations that I felt was that when I was asked, well, what do we think about what's happening with Dr. West? And I raised this question of, well, to what extent is Dr. West's experience reflective of the actual group of Black academics? In other words, should your case be held up as an example of what happens to Black academics, or is this something that is particular to the Dr. West and the Harvard University? So forgive that. I don't know if that was the best way to put that, but if you could respond or explain that, talk about your situation and as you see it, and how you fit into this broader array of Black academics struggling within the profession or the field of academia. Yeah, no, I appreciate the question. I mean, I just believe that we're living in an empire of such overwhelming spiritual decay and moral decrepitude that on the public face is the escalation of Jim Crow, new styles and new schools, but the same hatreds and the same attempts to dominate and devalue Black people, so that Harvard itself becomes one of the sites of the ruling class in which Jim Crow sensibilities are still very much at work in the name of a neoliberal concern about diversity and equity and all the other bureaucratic language that tries to hide and conceal white supremacist practices. So that my case is to be understood within the context of a ruling class elite formation site called Harvard, but it's part of a larger tendency within this society as a whole. You got new Jim Crow on the ground, brothers and sisters with mass incarceration, decrepit schools and inadequate health care and so forth. We got a professional managerial class that is very upset about racist impediments for their entree into higher echelons of the professional managerial class. They help reproduce the empire. They help reproduce predatory capitalism, but they're concerned about the racist impediments and so forth. So that for me is not, it's on a continuum, but it's relative to the context in which I myself I myself inhabit. Now, in my case, it's distinctive because I have a particular history within these ruling class institutions. I'm a university professor in 1996 at Harvard, university professor at Princeton in 2001 because of the racist attack by Larry Summers at that time. Then that's not widely shared, but it's still part of the same tendency. This time it had very much to do with the Palestinian issue. I'm just trying to be morally consistent and be in solidarity with my Palestinian brothers and sisters like anybody else, any other oppressed people. But it's a taboo issue, and everybody knows as soon as you speak strongly and stridently about it, you're going to be demonized and viewed as anti-Semite, anti-Jewish, and so forth and so on. But for me, the important thing is to highlight the degree to which is part of these larger escalating Jim Crow sensibilities, given the decay of a predatory capitalist a civilization with its imperial tentacles all around the world, the 800 bases, the AFRICOM networks on the continent, So that's the beginnings of an answer to your question. I mean, for us, the question is always, how do we respond? How do we resist? How do we sustain the resilience, the fortitude, the courage, the willingness to build on the visions of those who came before? I mean, I appreciate what you said about my dear brother, John Henry Clark. I sat at his feet. He used to have a Black study group, and he was running the Black and Puerto Rican studies at Hunter College. And Charles Hamilton was there, and Brother Kwame would come through. I was there every week. Brother Ben would come in from Harlem and so forth. And we'd have some rich dialogues. And he always say, "Oh, okay, here comes Brother West, part of that Martin Luther King legacy thing." I said, "Well, Martin is my man. Malcolm is too. So is Fannie Lou and Ella Baker. But I'm Jesus-loving free Black man. But I'm learning. I'm wrestling. Even from revolutionary heathens like Brother Jared. I love the heathens. We know you got spirituality deeper than a lot of the churches, brother. So we ain't gonna allow you to underestimate your spirituality. Amen. Even if you don't have no serious commitments to God talk, that's all right. That ain't what we're talking about right now. We talking about spirit in terms of courage, integrity, honesty, truth-telling, justice bearing. That's the bottom line. That can come from Rastas. That can come from Buddhists like bell hooks. That can come from Christians like James Cone, or it can come from agnostics like James Baldwin, the genius of Harlem, son of the church, had to leave the church in order to find the love that he didn't find in the church, moved toward very, very progressive politics, but still had a certain reticence oftentimes in terms of serious indictment of the bourgeoisie. I think right now, given the massive betrayal of national bourgeoisies in every corner of the globe of working and poor people, it becomes very important to bring back the E. Franklin Frazier's, to bring back the Carter G. Woodson's. Because you remember in Black bourgeoisie and the miseducation of the Negro, powerful critique of the Black bourgeoisie, powerful critique of the Black managerial class in its early formation, kind of thing that Brother Adolph Reed Jr. has been talking about for a while. And that's what's very important these days, because the class dimensions of the Black experience are becoming more explicit, and the refusal to come to terms with the Black poor, Black working class, and act as if they must live vicariously through Black celebrities, and live vicariously through Black elites, so that Black elites become the benchmark of Black progress and Black success. And we say, no, we understand the greatness has to do with this brother right here. You see, this first thing you see when you come in my office. Y'all see that?
We can see it, but we might not be able to make out who's in it. So you might have to tell us.
Yeah.
See, that's Louis Armstrong.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And you see what he's doing is he's enacting the distinctive feature of Black music, kenosis. He's emptying himself. He's giving himself. He's a joy spreader. Now his politics is a separate thing, but he is a spreader of joy, and he is one of the greatest revolutionary figures in the history of modern music. Ain't no doubt about that. So the sense of how we take that sense of emptying ourselves in radical revolutionary forms.
Can I jump in on you? Before, I want to interrupt the singing, brother. I didn't know you was about to do a tune or something. But I wanted to jump in on you brought up the Black bourgeoisie, and I've been reading some Joy James lately. And she talks about the role of the public intellectual, the Black intellectual, in our freedom struggle. And even sometimes the performative nature of public intellectuals now, and it's all about, their TV time, their radio time, or whatever, without any real commitment, politically speaking, to the Black masses. So and it's a broad question, but what do you think the public or the Black intellectual is these days as a class in terms of their relationship to the freedom struggle? Obviously, I think there's some exceptions. I'll just throw in really quickly, but it seems like the performative nature of getting out there and even dumbing down the politics of the Black freedom struggle. And I'll name some names. I think Pernell Joseph is one example of like some of the things that I've read that seem to really flatten out the historic struggle, radical struggle, and sort of puts everything back to like, you know, where was Malcolm headed? He was headed towards Obama, like, you know, that kind of thing. And even obviously Manning Marable's last book on Malcolm started to make a sort of trajectory of like, without Malcolm, there would be no Obama kind of thing, and putting everybody in sort of in this bourgeois middle class thing. So there seems to be this connection to the state as opposed to a dividing of like what's the state's interest versus the interest of our people. So if you talk a little bit at least about what you feel the role of the Black public intellectual is in terms of our freedom struggle, our liberation struggle.
No, I appreciate that question. And I'm so glad you begin with Sister Joy. You know, she was actually a student right here at Union Theological Seminary. She was my student. I remember she brought in this film on Ella Baker. It just come out, and that became part of her presentation. And then she went on to get a PhD and become now a towering figure in her own right. And I think that her insight is a crucial one. It's a crucial one. But the question is, you know, how do we keep track of these different sectors of the Black intelligentsia? It reminds me in some ways of between 1945 and 1973, which is kind of heyday of the American empire when it was really emerging. It was, for the most part, alone on the world stage, European empires disintegrating, the decolonization taking place in the third world, the demystifying and the deconstructing and the demythologizing of European narratives about itself. And what we had in the Black intelligentsia then was you had the Cold War liberals on the one hand, and you had Paul Robeson and Claudia Jones and John Henry Clark and Malcolm X and Paul Robeson and W. Du Bois on the other. And those leftists were thoroughly demonized. Oftentimes they were criminalized, passports taken away, Du Bois in Brooklyn, Paul Robeson in Philadelphia, livelihood undercut. And so you got the Cold War liberal projection in the NAACP and Company. And Martin King is very important because he swings between both. He was shaped by Cold War liberalism. He had certain kind of democratic socialist sensibilities with Norman Thomas, but he didn't have the critique of American empire that he ought to have until he listened closely to Stokely and some of the others in pushing him toward not just critique of Vietnam and critique of the United States' role in the Caribbean, United States' role in Latin America, and what have you. Well, jump to our day. Well, right now, that Cold War liberal trajectory leads directly to Obama, in which Black success is viewed as visibility in the mainstream for symbolic gestures of connection with Blackness, but for the most part is driven by a careerism and an opportunism tied to money and status, given the cultural spectacle. And the cultural spectacle means you got to be rich and smart. And smartness ain't got nothing to do with wisdom, ain't got nothing to do with courage. It's got to do with your ability to get over. Now, we can get gut bucking and just say, well, it's basically just survival of the slickest and obsession with the 11th commandment, thou shalt not get caught. Because you do, it becomes by any means necessary, I'm going to be successful. I see that's the most vulgarization of Malcolm X we can imagine. Malcolm talking about by any means necessary mean kenosis. You going to pay the ultimate cost. That's what by any means necessary meant for Malcolm. And he shot right up the street here at the Audubon Ballroom in Harlem, right? But you can see the ways in which the Black middle class and the Black professional educational class and Black bourgeoisie completely sanitizes, sterilizes that particular sense of solidarity. And there are major costs to pay. There's no doubt about it. And one of the reasons why I think people have the great respect they do for you all is that you are willing to cut radically against that grain and keep alive that Black radical tradition.
So, but Dr. West,
it could be with Margaret Kimberly, it could be with Ajumo. my dear brother, Jumu Baraka. I mean, it's hard
but Dr. West, let me ask a question about that real quick, if I could follow up on that, because so because I find, honestly, you present a tremendous challenge to me, because you're clearly a likable person. You clearly love Black people. You have a clear command of the history. And when you make public statements, you often are taking positions that resonate, if not fully with me, closely to my own politics. But then at the same time, we'll see you rock with you were rocking with DeRay McKesson recently, Henry Louis Gates, these are like Henry Louis Gates built his career crushing John Henrik Clarke and people like that. So I'm like, what are we supposed to do with that? And how do you see yourself in those spaces? I don't even in regard in the context of this question of public intellectualism.
Right. No, and that's a very heartfelt question. What a sincere question. And Malcolm used to say, sincerity is my only credential, or my main credential. You're a sincere brother. I love that. But no, for me, it really is a matter of recognizing that there's personal and interpersonal dynamics that have to do with how you relate to persons that overlap but are not identical with political and ideological dynamics. And so I've got friends with a whole lot of different folk I have profound political and ideological differences with, you see. So Skip Gates has always been a friend. We met in 1984 at Yale, and our families became close and so forth. But I've always been honest and candid about him in terms of, the connection to Booker T. Washington institutional building and the connection with white elites and moneyed interests and so forth. And yet I can also discern in him his understanding of what Black freedom, the quest for Black freedom is about, and his commitment to it. So when he engages in that fight, for example, with John Henrik Clarke over Black anti-Semitism, the famous piece that he did, and the other issues, I can just say, brother Skip, you're wrong, man. You're wrong, though, brother. And he would say the same thing to me. He'd say, well, Brother West, you far out there. I'm not going to be talking about Palestine. I'm not going to be talking about American imperialism. I'm not going to be talking about American capitalism. How come? Because I'm not a critic of capitalism in the same way you are. I'm a liberal. I say, well, see, liberalism is the key sweat thing. Some just ain't right.
So where's the line drawn?
You're missing out, you see. So it goes back and forth. Same is true with Glenn Loury. Glenn Loury, he's a
I just saw you talking to him too. I was like, are you serious?
So many issues and so forth and so on. When he bounced back as a Christian, we embraced it. When I had the gathering at the Schomburg, I brought him back in. We brought the Black preachers that we were shaping with Malefi Asante and I. Malefi and I were teaching the course in Jeremiah Wright's church, at Trinity Church in Chicago for 4 years. And when Brother Glenn bounced back, we embraced him at the Unity Seminary, which is the Samuel Proctor's fellow, trying to shape these Black preachers into connecting them to the legacy of Martin Luther King Jr., J.C. Austin, the great pastor of Pilgrim Baptist Church, there with Tom Dorsey and with Mahalia Jackson, and close to Garvey. You remember he's the one right there in the car with Garvey. He said, well, with J.C. Austin, and known as the dancing preacher, so he make MC Hammer look like a Boy Scout. Now, I tell you, that brother get hit by the Holy Ghost when he's preaching. MC Hammer got to sit down. That's J.C. And that's in the 1930s, man. 1930s. People wait 4 hours to hear him preach. That's part of our tradition, too. So it's a matter of connecting with all these different voices, and yet, most importantly, being true to yourself.
To
yourself. So when you came up with the critique of Manny Marable, I love Manny Marable. We work together all the time. I told Manny, man, you better listen to Brother Jared and Mary Baraka and these folks. You starting to sanitize Malcolm in a way.
But Brother West, you had Zahir Ali on your show twice, and we didn't make one bit of an appearance. So I gotta call. I mean, that
was with Brother Tavis.
With Tavis and them, and we didn't get any run. You had Zahir on there twice. I was like, oh.
But when it comes to our people's liberation, how thin is the line between friend and comrade? because of the fact that right now we're in crucial times. And, it's one thing for me to be cool with Jared and Kamal, but politically, how important is that? Because of the fact that, some would say that some of these folks are a setback to our liberation. So how do you respond to that? Is it, it's just we cool, we homies, or how that work?
Yeah, see, and that distinction, though, my brother, is so crucial with friend versus comrade. And you can even add comrade versus family. What the Thanksgiving dinner's like in terms of who's around the table. You got family, you got deep political and ideological disagreements, but you still take a bullet for. And see, for me, friends, genuine friends, really are like family. That is to say, they're persons who you have deep cares for, even though you have deep political and ideological disagreements with. And as things intensify, as they will, as they already have, you then wonder, well, what happens when you have friends who, one, you never want to be in a foxhole with. That's very important. Because I'm not getting in the foxhole with Brother Skip. I love the brother, but I ain't getting in there. No. He's too close to the Harvard administration. He's too close to the elites who trying to crush him. He's too close to the folk who've been lying about him. Now he'll tell me, they shouldn't be crushing you, brother. They shouldn't be lying about you. But that's different than being in the foxhole. I'm going to get in the foxhole with Glenn Ford. That's a whole different thing, you see. But that doesn't mean that Skip's not my friend and my brother. Now, part of it maybe is just Christian sensibilities too. You try to love everybody. You have a classical Christian notion of hatred where you hate the sin and still try to stay in contact with the humanity of the sinner. That's Shiloh Baptist Church. That's Vacation Bible School. That's Chocolate Side of Sacramento, where I come from. And that's maybe where Brother Jared and I might have a certain kind of healthy tension. Because the heathen sensibility says you don't have to have that kind of connection with the humanity of the oppressor. You see, is that? I don't want to put words in your mouth. Is that
the only difference would be I would say that they don't have humanity to be in touch with.
They don't have humanity at all.
No.
Yeah, you see, I wouldn't go that far.
Okay.
We just want to make sure you're going to take him out during the revolution too.
Because Cain and Abel were brothers. You know what I'm saying? And that ain't work out too well. So that.
But this is very important because the part of their humanity is choosing to behave in such a way that they have no humanity. That's a choice that they make, and they can change. They can change. Oh, that's true. But it's like Malcolm Little versus Malcolm X. Hey, Malcolm Little he's a brilliant gangster, man. If he hadn't been loved by the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, he wouldn't have undergone his transformation. Then he outgrew the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. So people do change, right? People undergo transformation.
Yeah, but it's getting late in the evening when it comes to Skip Gates. I mean, you know what I'm saying? I mean, he might change his beard, him and Obama with the beard summit. When he gonna change, man? I mean,
that's same topic, but I wanted to bring up Coates a little bit because there was the back and forth in the media. I think you put out some statements sort of overtly challenging his positioning, what he represented, who he was. I don't know if you guys, what you could share, had a private conversation before what your relationship is, but you publicly put some stuff out around who he is and what he represents. Can you talk a little bit just around what was it that made you feel so strongly about having to put something out to either make people, what you felt was making people either aware, making sure that he wasn't sort of falling into a space where he got maybe unnecessary accolades around his positioning, again, around Black struggle and Black freedom struggle. Like, I was curious about, I never heard sort of the background of that. Like, so what was it that prompted sort of like these public statements to say, in some ways, like, this guy needs to be watched and not given this sort of kind of clear runway to be so strongly identified with Black struggle or Black freedom struggle?
And if I can
put out some stuff,
Yes.
And if I can, Wes, why would you be willing to speak out that way against Coates, but not even respond in that kind of way when Dyson took all that money to say all of those ridiculous things about you. So could you add that into your response, the difference in why you challenge Coates in that way and not?
Well, I mean, keep in mind, I did respond to Dyson.
Yeah, that's true.
He was involved in the self-projection. He was viewing me as if he was himself. And therefore, his careerism, his opportunism, his refusal to really try to enact any kind of integrity. But it was just on Facebook.
Right. That's what I meant. That's what I meant.
You're right. You're right. But same is true with Brother Coates. I never responded on paper. I responded on Facebook. But actually, it began with my very, very dear sister, Toni Morrison. And the only reason why I left Union and went to Princeton, she called him and said, honey, let's create an intellectual neighborhood together. I said, sookie now. With God Almighty. That sounds like the voice of heaven right there. Time for me to leave. But when Tony said he is our James Baldwin, and I said, no, we that's like saying Usher is Donny Hathaway. Somebody got to intervene. You know what I mean?
Good Lord.
Gladys Knight. I love Joey. She can sing everything, but Gladys gonna take me home. It's like saying Alicia Keys is it's Rochelle Farrell. We got to keep our standards together. So all I said was James Baldwin was a great writer and Coates was a clever wordsmith. I said James Baldwin was willing to give his life when he went to Jim Crow apartheid South and could have been shot. Whereas Coates views himself as always detached. We tried to get him to be part of the stop and frisk movement. He said he gonna show up. Didn't show up because of his agents. And I said, he's the darling of Atlantic magazine. That's neoliberal politics tied to uncritical acceptance of Israeli domination and occupation of Palestinians. So he's talented. His voice is fine. But if you're going to show up with your saxophone and still playing scales and somebody tell you Coltrane, somebody got to say, no, you're Coates. You're not Baldwin. You're going to have a nervous breakdown if people looking at you like you Baldwin and you Coates. You got talent, continue to cultivate it, but somebody got to defend the standards of our tradition. You see what I mean? They can flatten down all you want. Well, we won't go into other analogies, but this is very real. This is very important. It's like some of these little young brothers start rapping and say they Rakim. No, you're not Rakim. Get your work together. Get your discipline together. He's the Coltrane of hip hop. You better study him, but you ain't him. You see what I mean? That's what I was saying to Coach. And then they came back. Oh, you jealous because you full of envy? No. Coach got the same literary agent that I do. I was asked by the literary agent, was she even interested in him years ago? I said, yes, he's a talented brother. He come out of D.C. But I had to let her go because then she coming at me, telling me, well, I think you're envious too. I said, well, no, you don't understand me or my mama and daddy.
So
you do perfect, but I'm not envious. No, I cultivate young voices.
So it's your fault we hear from Coates.
Voices by telling them that they are Aretha, Coltrane, Donny Hathaway, Luther Vandross, James Baldwin, John Henry Clark, W. Du Bois. You don't say that to folks. The standards are too high. You see what I mean? That's what that was about. Now, of course, I went on to say that he reifies white supremacy. There's no capitalism in there. There's no imperialism in there. No class struggle in there. No critiques of the black bourgeoisie in there. No critiques of any kind of class formations and class struggles, you see. So that kind of reification is easily accommodated to neoliberal mainstream discourse that means you're going to make big money. Now, when he won the MacArthur Genius Award the next year, I said, sookie now. I was much more right than I thought. Wow. The embrace is full. The darling of the neoliberal establishment is confirmed. And that's good. I'm glad the brother got money. I don't want him to be broke as the Ten Commandments, but he got to know what he is in relation to the tradition that produced him. Now, his father's a magnificent editor who's played a crucial role in keeping our tradition alive, Brother Paul, along with Haki. I was just with Haki this weekend. We honored him at New Mount Pilgrim Baptist Church at Reverend Hatch with Dwight McKee. I went to see the minister on the farm in Michigan. See how my brother Farrakhan was doing. We had a 2.5 hour talk. Then I met with Brother Father Flager that night. He just made his entree back to St. Sabina. You all been following on what's happening in South Side Chicago in terms of the different vicious, ugly charges against him. And in that time in Chicago, what is it? I also get empowered from a variety of different perspectives. I got my critiques, Minister Louis Farrakhan. Ain't no doubt I got deep disagreements, but I got a deep love for that brother Flager, Vanilla Brother in the Chocolate Church, 46 years, doing his thing. He's my deep brother too. But Catholic positions on abortion, no, that ain't me. Catholic positions on same-sex marriage, that ain't me. Haki was a beautiful tribute we had for Brother Haki with Sufisha, his wonderful wife. And Haki, of course, is very close to the coach. So he came down hard on me. He said, Brother West, I've known Paul for 50 years. He's family. You got to lighten up on Brother Coach. I said, I'm not lightening up. I'm just telling the truth, man. Am I lying? No, you're not lying. That's all I need to know.
Moving from Coach to a real writer, Mumia Abu-Jamal, we know you've been a supporter of Mumia for some years. How important would you say, and to your audience, that the support of political prisoners are here in the United States and abroad? Because I think that, again, I've seen your outward support for Mumia, but we have folks like Imam Jamil Al-Amin, formerly H. Rap Brown. We have Sundiata Kohli, who's 84, who's languishing in these gulags right now. So I wanted to know from you, on record, like, how important is it to support political prisoners, because of the fact that not too many of these scholars are talking about political prisoners?
Yeah, and it's what you say is so true, and I love the kiss that just took place between the young one and the brother Franklin here, because we got to have a love for our people, and especially those who have been willing to pay the ultimate cost. I mean, I just wrote an afterword for H. Rap Brown, Brother Jamil's collection of essays that came out. You remember the introduction I wrote for Mumia way back almost 20 years ago, that these are they who out of kenosis have emptied themselves. That's the deepest form of love. Have given everything, paid the ultimate price other than a bullet in the heart, but having to undergo this massive incarceration with the vicious attacks from guards and so forth and so on. So that it seems to me, consistent with a love of Black people has to be a deep love of those who have been willing to pay the ultimate cost. And that's what we're talking about. We're talking about political prisoners. And it's no accident that so many of the genuine, what I call love warriors and freedom fighters, were either incarcerated, assassinated, or rendered more and more silent, ensuring that their voices are not heard. And that goes hand in hand with the ways in which the professional managerial class and the Black bourgeoisie has been able to dominate the discourse in such a very limited and truncated way. You can see it on TV, MSNBC, and CNN, and so forth and so on. It's just it's so narrow. It's like trying to fit James Brown funk into Lawrence Welk's bubble-driven music. There's no way you can fit it in because the funk is too rich. Well, see, that's almost like trying to fit you all in MSNBC. It's too narrow. It's too barren. And yet that is what goes for political discourse. So political prisoners become one of the fundamental issues among a whole host of others that must always be constitutive of what we understand a love for Black people is all about.
I wanted to jump into and talk a little bit about ADOS. You earlier, and I don't know if you did any post response to this or anything like that, but I know I saw a video you at ADOS conference, and you kind of gave them a big up. And so I wanted to ask a little bit about, before I sort of like going more in depth or whatever, what is your take on ADOS as a movement? I think I don't want to speak for everybody, but we probably have some really solid critiques, to say lightly. But I was curious around what got you to the ADOS conference, and what were you trying to get accomplished. And I wanted to just talk a little bit more about their politics and so forth. So I wanted to explore that a little bit just to see where you stood on it at first.
Right. Yeah. No, indeed. Because I think I would probably resonate with a number of your critiques. One of the things, see, what I try to do, I try to go to everywhere I think people are trying to express a love for Black people. And I discern in the heart of Sister Yvette and Brother Tone a love for Black people in light of their vision and lens and perspective. And their fundamental issue is a crucial one, which is the specificity of New World Africans who have been shaped by the U.S. empire. Now, the Caribbean, South Africa, all Africans in the New World, with different histories. And so each time I go, when I went to that conference, I hope you saw what I said. I told them, I said, look, I believe in the specificity of what used to be called Negroosity. You see, to be a Black man from Mississippi and Georgia is not the same as being a Black man or Black woman from Colombia or Cuba or Haiti. But we have to have specificity and solidarity. That solidarity is deep, but the specificity is real as well. And they're wrestling with it. I mean, I'll give you an example. You know, I stand on the floor of the Harvard faculty, you know, many decades ago, and said, well, I'd like to know how many Black students we actually had. Oh, we've got 11%. No, I'm talking about ex-Negroes. I'm not talking about from Africa. I'm not talking about from the Caribbean. Ex-Negroes. When I came in 1970, we had 90 ex-Negroes. And the answer finally I got was we had 21, because the number of ex-Negroes had gone down, but the number of Black folk had expanded exponentially. But they came from other places. The Otto's movement is a response to how do you deal with the specificity of Black folk from Alabama, Mississippi, Florida, California, Chicago, Detroit, versus our precious brothers and sisters from Africa, Caribbean, Latin America.
So just to jump in a little bit.
I have no tolerance for using, let's call it ex-Negro specificity, as a way of precluding solidarity. But at the same time, you can't homogenize New World Africans in such a way that you downplay Jamal.
I don't disagree. Yeah, and I don't think I disagree with that.
Jose from Puerto Rico.
Yeah.
Both
yeah. I was in a movement.
Black, but having different history.
I'm sorry to jump in. I was in a movement, Republic New African Independence Movement. So the specificity, I concur. Do you worry though that by not just by, I mean, obviously engaging everyone can be great, but do you worry about the public engagement, the showing up at a public conference that is their conference and speaking with them gives them some cover, whether you mean to or not? Because when they slice up that tape of yours, right, it looks like you are there as a proponent of their particular philosophy, ideology, and their positioning. And so you may have a more nuanced position. You may have a more a larger position, particularly around some of their overt anti-immigration stance, where they get their money from, their conservatism, their lack of speaking out on American imperialism, and in fact, purposely not speaking out because it feels like sometimes it's like, if you give us our cut, then we'll shut up, basically, right? That's sometimes what the feeling is around them. But do you worry, and I think you should worry, but do you worry about if you make these, you go to these events as opposed to engaging privately or trying to move them, but you go, that they use what could be your good name in terms of your anti-imperialist struggles, your pro-blackness, your radicalness, as a cover for them saying, look, we are, Cornell West endorses us or believes in us or came to be a part of us. And people miss the nuance of like, well, Cornell is saying this, and this, as opposed to endorsing us whole in terms of our politics.
Yeah, no, I think you're absolutely right about that. I think that's a risk that I take in a variety of different contexts. You know what I mean? Walking the streets just this morning, and seeing my brothers from the Nation of Islam, sharp as they could be, giving them a hug, talking about how much I love them. People say, oh, I see, so you tied into this stance on the vaccination. You tied into this stance on patriarchy. You tied in this stance on the wheel in the sky. And so what? Well, no. We Christians, we got our problems in terms of going beyond the evidence. So I understand that we have to be very clear and very honest about where we stand. But you're absolutely right. I mean, anytime you find yourself in a context where you got some deep disagreements, people can use your presence as a way of downplaying that and using your presence as a way of affirming things that you individually don't affirm. But I think that's just a risk. It really is. But I think that's also true for revolutionaries. I mean, revolutionaries have to be jazz-like enough, improvisational enough, flexible enough to move from a variety of different contexts, including contexts that they have deep disagreements in, and try to preserve that nuance that you're talking about. Try to preserve, I'm here because of this particular issue, but I don't affirm X, Y, or Z. And if you try to somehow cast it in such a way that I'm presenting a full-fledged wholesale endorsement of your project, then you're misleading people and you're lying about me. Then I have to go on the show, or I got to go on the radio, TV, or write and say, no, somebody didn't start lying on me. This is not true. I don't agree with this, but this is what I do agree with. This is why I was there in Louisville, Kentucky, because they got some strong folk and part of their reparations movement. Reparations is something I've always viewed as crucial. Goes all the way back to Randall Robinson, goes all the way back to Charles Ogletree and Trans-Africa. And reparations to me is a very important issue. When Brother Tone and Sister Yvette raise that issue, raise voices, I want to be there to promote reparations in light of my understanding of the critiques of U.S. empire, predatory capitalism, and so forth. But I've always been somebody who was a supporter of reparations.
Yeah, Dr. West, we view you as a brilliant brother, as a brilliant African. But I must say there's a difference between dapping somebody up on the street saying, what's up, love and all that,
right,
and showing up to their crib. You know what I'm saying? We know for us, like we've all done press conferences and we know how the media splices and dices and all that. So even when you rap, and I know you've done way more press conferences than we have, but even with your rap, that that they will edit, remix, and do whatever they have to do just to get that clickbait. So you got to be very careful what you're doing, and you also have to be careful with where you hang out at. So we know that. But the thing is, how do we? Because we don't want to dance on the line of liberalism. And when I say you're a brilliant brother, man, we got to figure out, like, the barricades. We got to draw the line. Like, okay, if these folks are talking about this, that, and the third, if your whole suit is dirty and your tie is clean, you still got a dirty suit on. You can't say, well, I unite with that tie. That's a very beautiful tie you have. You're like, man, this dude ain't washed up. He ain't do whatever. So how do we draw those lines? Again, it goes back to the accountability, because we often talk about being accountable, but it's rare that we actually see each other saying, okay, you know what? This right here is a major contradiction, and we must deal with it. And publicly say, I unite with these folks on this particular issue, but on these over here, this is some cockamamie malarkey, and it's out the ballpark. So I'm trying to figure out where is that line drawn?
Yeah. Well, you all are pushing me in some very wonderful ways because I'm trying to think of concrete examples, because I don't want to give an abstract answer to your question.
That's cool, brother.
I'm trying to think of concrete examples where I would just draw the line and say, this have nothing to do whatsoever with a liberal, neoliberal, and so forth and so on. And I think it's hard for me to conceive of that at the moment. And we ain't talking about the Klan and neo-Nazis and things. I'm just talking about liberals and neoliberals. That there is a certain porousness for me in terms of the movements in different contexts, the multi-contextual movements that I make. And so I do find myself in a number of contexts now where I've got some very, very deep disagreements that I can see you all say, wait a minute, how come this African, this African, this black man is not drawing this line? And then what was that wonderful language you said, but kind of dancing on the borderline of liberalism?
Yeah, dancing on the line.
Exactly.
We know you're a good dancer, but
well, I mean, one thing, just quickly, the one thing that I've seen happen a lot, and I'm seeing even happen increasingly with people in my generation, is that people, and this is where one of the few instances that I actually do focus on generational gaps, because one of the things that I think is happening is that there are people of younger generations with, in this case, truly disturbed politics, who reach out to elders on a different basis, and the disconnect in terms of what is known about this group is not necessarily made clear. So, for instance, I don't know exactly how it happened, but I suspect, for instance, that when ADOS reached out to you, they didn't include their critique or their claim that people like Ogletree and Randall Robinson and Cobra and Ray Winbush had been useless in their endeavor to get reparations and needed to be replaced and nearly forgotten about by this new generation, where Yvette is literally being called the 21st century Malcolm X by her followers. So
right? They using that language for Sister Yvette?
Absolutely.
Wow, I didn't know
in
that.
fact,
we got another coach case here. Got another coach case.
That's what I'm saying.
Is that Malcolm X or Malcolm Jamal Warner? They might have said it wrong.
But my point is that to attract, to get your support, I'm assuming they would approach you very different. In the same way, on some level, when I engaged them, they approached me differently. They approached me on a certain limited basis. I didn't catch their full politics until late, and when that was made clear, they attacked me and others, and on a very disingenuous basis that had nothing to do with politics. So that's what I just want to throw that out there. I think that is one thing that is happening across the political spectrum. Where I think we have to do better of closing these gaps generationally, so that some of the folks that are down, the younger folks coming up and reaching out to some of the bigger names, where the younger folks are more well known in terms of their shortcomings, that could be made more clear. We just need to find a way to work that out, because that was a clear. They clearly were hustling on that.
Anytime I get a call from my dear brother Malik Zulu Shabazz, who I've known ever since he was a student.
Oh Lord. Yeah. We got it.
Hey, brother Cornell.
With Rashid and the other. And they talk.
I'm with Daruba. We don't talk about Zulu Shabazz on here.
Yeah. I'm there for the dialogue.
So that's one line. See that?
Let them finish.
Time to draw the line. But I love the brothers. I just know we got disagreements and things, but I can have a presence, and they know where I'm coming from. They know that we got deep disagreements and things. They know where I'm coming from. So, in you all's view, am I drawing the line too weakly? Should I draw the line too thickly?
No, I mean, I had the criticism as far as we talked about the whole ADOS thing, but Malik Zulu Shabazz, like this white communist dude told me one time when I was on a white socialist program. He asked me, how low can you go? That right there, I mean, Malik Zulu Shabazz is a piece of shit, with all due respect. You know what I'm saying? I mean, what happened with Daruba and myself and others,
what happened with Daruba? Daruba's my brother too. What happened, man?
We can get into it.
But I mean,
basically,
speaking, maybe not all.
Yeah, there was an assault that took place in 2015 between 30 members of the new Black Panther Party and Daruba and a few other folks, including myself. So yeah.
Oh,
so yeah.
So I didn't realize that.
So that's okay. But that is a clown, and I don't mean to interrupt our joke. We can get back to our regular scheduled program. But that right there is like saying Ronald Reagan is a good president on this particular show.
Oh, and I think the logic question becomes it's because in some ways. I think we've talked about this too. Like we've harked back to some days, like, being in more of the organizer activist world, where we'll look at folks from the 60s and 70s have these larger, bigger discussions, public discussions, right, around their differing politics, where you have revolutionary nationalists and liberals having those public discussions. And I'm saying public, but they're also discussions and debates, right, where folks are talking about their different lines. So no one is saying don't engage per se, but it feels like the discussions back then were overtly meant to draw out some lines, ideological lines and differences. So I'm not. So I don't think anybody's saying like don't have. Or making a suggestion about not having discussions, debates. The question becomes the critique and criticisms of what it feels like is where would you say you draw? I mean, obviously we know, like you said before, like there's white supremacists and so forth and so on. And Coates, again, just because of what you said, how folks were propping him up, became an obvious person to say. Not that you won't have a discussion with them, but this is somebody who's obviously serving a certain interest. For you, like, what do you think you use or should use as a measure for sometimes drawing a line for, you know what I mean? Like what, again, not necessarily just acknowledging that folks love Black people and so therefore I love them, but where would we draw a certain kind of line on what could look like, again, whether meant to or not, an endorsement of certain politics, as opposed to a discussion and critique of politics so that people can hear the sides and the differences, if that makes sense.
But I think part of the challenge, very briefly, is that when people invite you somewhere, you just make it clear that this is not an endorsement, this is a dialogue, this is a critical exchange, and I'm coming from a particular legacy that I try to make clear, and it is a legacy that has a certain fusion of Martin and Malcolm and Ella and so forth, but I also got a strong Marxist backdrop too that is different than a lot of folk, you see. But that doesn't always make a difference. Right back to Manny Marable. Manny Marable got strong Marxist backdrop too, but he could also end up casting Malcolm as some kind of social democrat or whatever that we know is wrong and need to be radically corrected. You can't understand that Black national tradition and so forth. And so I gave you another example that I've forever been in dialogue with my dear brother Maulana Karanga. I just got back in dialogue with him. And he's my dear brother. We got some very deep struggles together, but I got a love for him. And yet I always make clear where I stand. He made clear where he stands. And I'm trying to learn more about my art. I'm trying to learn more about how that connects revolutionary struggle. Trying to learn more about the relation of nationalism and internationalism. Almost echoes of Fanon. You can't have internationalism without national consciousness, but national consciousness has to be a step toward international solidarity, those kind of issues. And so in that sense, in terms of critical dialogue, I tend to be very, very open-ended. But in terms of being used as an endorser of a particular kind of politics, I try to be very, very distant from, because I'm not really into endorsement, even if folk could be trying to use and manipulate me in such a way that it looks like I'm endorsing folk. Does that make sense to you? Although I don't.
It does, and and I wanted to make sure we asked, at least in this discussion, the electoral political version of this sort of thing, because I noticed you started working, at least to a certain extent, with the People's Party, Nick Branagh and Jimmy Dore and all of them, and I admit I'm very interested in that. Not that I think electoral politics is necessarily a solution, but I like to anything that advocates we break from electoral politics is conventionally practiced. So I'm very interested in your relationship to that movement and that effort, and just in general what you think about the vote going forward. Anyway, I'll just stop there.
Yeah, but I mean, when I think back of Gary in '72, I was in Philadelphia in 1980 for NBIP, National Black Independent Political Party, working with Herb Daltrey, National Black United Front, House of Lord Pentecostal Church in 415 Atlantic Avenue. We were always concerned about independent politics. Even when Jesse announced in '84 on the East Coast, it was at Daltrey's church. Why? Because he knew there was an independent black politics, independent politics from the two parties. But then with Jesse coming in, lo and behold, you got all that energy filtered right back into the Democratic Party, but was raising some certain progressive issues, was still filtered right back into the Democratic Party. Or we're going to have some possibilities. Ron Daniels and the others say, well, we might have some independent political possibilities, even back in the 80s, trying to pull it off. When I think of where we are now, I think first of Brother Bernie himself, 2016, 2020, and I did over 75 events for that brother. And I don't take a penny from none of these politicians because I'm a Jesus-loving free black man. That's why I don't.
Do you feel like you were used by that?
Well,
speaking of that,
I think that it was a moment in which we were trying to provide some political education in regard to critiques of Wall Street and critiques of capitalism that needed to be expanded in the public imagination. And Brother Bernie was one of the first figures to really talk explicitly about not just critiques of corporate elites, but critiques of capitalism. And so I threw myself wholeheartedly in it, but it certainly became a two-party operation as the neoliberal wing, the corporate wing of the Democratic Party, became more not just hegemonic, but more vicious in its treatment of us. But then we came back again, 2020, boom, same thing again. What other independent party formation did we have? That's one of the reasons why I've been so open to Brother Nick. Now, I've heard a number of critiques of that in terms of its relation to different black folk that I try to take seriously as well.
You talking about the People's Party?
Yeah.
Oh, really? I'm not up on that.
Yeah, I've got some different voices from Brother Marcus and Brother Ben and others about the People's Party not being as fair and egalitarian to black folk as it ought to be.
Well, but again, I'm cool with Ben Dixon, but again, same thing. But Ben and Marcus and them, they are, and if I'm not mistaken, Marcus in particular are literally paid by the Democratic Party to recruit black people to vote for them. So I mean, their bias is going to be pretty evident there. So that's why at least I'm very interested. I'm not, again, Nick Branagh and all of that. I'm not saying these are revolutionary hero leaders. I'm just saying they're offering. I think they're making a legit argument, which is why I was very interested in your involvement.
And that's why I initially moved with them, and I do remain with them to the degree to which we come to terms with whatever these various challenges are as it relates to white supremacist elements operate. But I'm with you. But let me ask you all this question. I mean, where do you all understand the state of the Black liberation movement in these decadent and deteriorating times, though?
That's funny how you jacked my question. I was about to ask you the same thing.
I want to hear from you because I'm learning.
We find out Cornell West is related to Miss Cleo. He just came in and took my whole question. I was just about to ask you, say, hey, what are you? I'm like, got my headphones tapped. What's going on, Dr. Cornell West?
Wow, he went way back with that reference, boy.
Hey, he hit me off real quick. He threw me off. I was like, huh?
Yeah. I mean, to jump in though, I think the Black liberation struggle is in dire straits in some ways, because I think we are still suffering from a time period from 60s to the 70s where COINTELPRO wiped out the most militant aspects of the Black liberation struggle, the most forward-thinking aspects of the Black revolutionary struggle, and left standing in place the moderates that could be funded through corporate funding, and the descendants of that is partly what we're experiencing today. The same group, my age and a little younger, of folks who criticized and critiqued the Jesse Jacksons and the Al Sharptons for performative activism, the same way we just talked about performative public intellectualism, but performative activism are the folks who get put out there by liberal media. They get mass public funding from foundations. They use the language of radical movements in terms of talking about self-determination, oppression. They get to do all of that stuff. And they're put forth as leaders of our communities with massive social media outlets. And they continually drive us back into, or herd us back into, the Democratic Party. And I call it movement capture, where our movement has basically circled right back around. No matter how militant we get, the state is smart enough, crafty enough, that it circles us right back into the Democratic Party. And so all that energy over the last 6 or 7 years has basically been turned into, from being explosive during the latter part of Obama's time period to now energy around getting Trump out and getting Biden in, who's nothing but a neoliberal moderate and has proven himself, particularly through his latest actions on the policing the lack of fighting for a real minimum wage, the lack of fighting for free healthcare, his imperialist ambitions, the lack of fighting for free public education or canceling debt, that he's nothing more than a neoliberal, but yet that's who all of our energies put in. And 4 years from now, it's going to be the same thing, right? It's going to be the same thing. Kamala Harris, because I don't think Biden's going to make it, but Kamala Harris is basically going to be put up there as our savior against this new Trumpian or Trump-like figure who comes, and we're going to be told, unless we vote for Kamala Harris, who is black like us, who is a black woman, then somehow we are selling out, not doing our job, not fighting hard enough. And this is the state of movement politics, because movement politics has been, relatively speaking, destroyed. And there's remnants, of course, but relatively speaking, destroyed from being able to create mass movements, because all these resources go to these grass top leaders who get to represent themselves as movement leaders, and then go on their own speaking tours, their own consultancies and so forth, and taking all the resources that don't give us any real movement, even though they've got in the bag to tunes of like literally 90 million and more, which they're supposed to be creating black liberation politics, but it just does not happen.
No, that's real though, brother.
There's nothing. The only thing I would want to add to that, because we could go on for days on this, is that I think that this is a particularly difficult time, because to the sophistication that Kamal is talking about is added this enhanced media environment that is itself designed specifically for the purposes of counterinsurgency, psychological warfare primarily, and it's making it difficult for traditions of radical struggle to be taken seriously, to be developed, to be talked about, debated. One of the reasons why we started this collective here is to try to recreate a public sphere, a black radical public sphere, to bring collectives into conversation with each other that are already left of a certain political line that has been established as acceptable in this country, so that we can try to mitigate some of the struggles that we've talked about this last hour or so with you, that allow for individuals to be co-opted or misappropriated or re-symbolized or rebranded, to have movements be similarly rebranded and redefined. This is a very difficult time, and I think we need to, just more organization, less individualism, and return to the source of sorts with Cabral and these radical politics and traditions that we've been trying to outline, today. And that's, anyway, so even as I'm critical of some of the things, we've talked a little bit about our disagreements and criticisms of some of your engagements or whatever. I also try to analytically understand that it has got to be one of the most difficult positions and times to do the work that you're doing in, because of this confused media moment, this disorganized, political moment, this symbolic moment. And then the tendency to want to be, to be friendly with people you see as part of your community. And then when they invite you to space. So anyway, I think we just that's why I think we need to be more headed towards organization offline, to protect ourselves and prepare ourselves. Anyway.
Well, this is why these discussions are so crucial, but I want to hear from
go ahead, Kalanji.
Yeah. And this is part of the reason we've been pushing the whole drawing the line situation, because of the fact that the legitimizing of the nonsense can be done by default. You know what I mean? I think that many of us, definitely you, I think that good intentions are at play here. But I think that, like they say, the road to hell is paved in good intentions. So we have to say, okay, boom, we're absolutely at war. And we understand that traditionally the so-called radical element has been boxed out. You know what I'm saying? So we got to reverse that decision. And now we got to start boxing some of these Negroes out who are working on behalf of the state. We got to start boxing some of these Negroes out who are telling us, okay, just vote. Or that Martin and Malcolm died for our right to vote, which we know is we know it was self-determination. That had nothing to do with just pushing a lever or a ballot. So that's my whole take in it. And what Jared said as far as organizing offline. But we are, let me just say, as far as Black Power Media, we're absolutely honored and happy that you took the time to come out here and rock with us. But we need to continue this discussion beyond just, in front of our quote unquote base. We have to take this to another level because of the fact that that's the only way that we're truly going to get liberation. It's entertaining at this point. We have brothers and sisters in the chat, and they're going to see this video years from now, and they can say, "Oh, that was a good discussion." But we the best rappers alive. You know that. You know what I'm saying? Because we talk so damn smooth. You know what I mean? So that's all we're saying, and hopefully that's understood between us.
No, indeed. But that's what I was really saying in terms of just how crucial it is that we spend this kind of time together and be so honest and be so for real with each other in terms of whatever faults and foibles, whatever strengths that have, so we all emerge we emerge stronger. I think part of the shadow cast by Brother Obama is just a complete displacement of the Black radical tradition. So that the thickness of misperception, the thickness of misconstrue, this is true for our precious brothers and sisters on the block, it's true for the folk in the professional managerial classes. And that shadow is still cast. And that's part of the work that we have been doing collectively as voices, as well as connected to our respective organizations and so forth, trying to tell the truth about what it means to have a Black face head of an American empire with its barbaric drones, with its AFRICOM, with its ties to Wall Street, ties to surveillance state, with its bounty on our dear sister in Cuba,
Assad, yes.
Assad, and so on. You see, those things have to be said over and over again because they're the truth. And the condition of truth is to allow suffering to speak. And if you don't allow certain suffering to speak, you're scared of the truth. And if you're scared, get out of the way. Right. If you're afraid, get out of the way. Baldwin said, don't, be afraid. That's what I came back with Cole. I said, that's the core of Baldwin's letter to his nephew. Don't, be afraid. That's Mary Ellen Pleasant. I'd rather be a corpse than a coward. That's Martin. I'd rather be dead than afraid. That's how we deniggerize ourselves, become Africans. We're not afraid.
Yeah. I will say, like, one of the bravest things.
What we say, we're willing to pay a cost. Bottom line.
Yeah. I was going to jump in real quick and say one of the bravest things, I think.
City, Arkansas. He ain't afraid on the stage to be himself. Thank you for letting me be myself, says the brother who used to play piano in Shiloh Baptist Church named Sylvester, but the world knows him as Sly. He used to play every fifth Sunday in my church. Thank you for letting me be myself. That's what y'all do. Each time you get behind the microphone in your life, you're going to be yourself. But you're also going to be radical. You're also going to be revolutionary. And you're also going to be loving the music.
Yeah, no doubt. You heard it here first. Dr. Cornell West in the building with the Remix Morning Show on Black Power Media. This is probably the most blackest morning show he ever did in the history of black. You know what I'm saying? Yo, we love you, brother. Keep up.
I love y'all so much.
Appreciate you, Dr. West. Thank you very much.
And Brother Jared, when you call, just let me know. You know, I come running, brother.
All right, we'll
you were kind of be able to have patience with me, but just know I'm running to get here because y'all are good for my soul.
Hey, we appreciate you, brother.
Well, we will invite you back for another dose of this organic soul food another time for sure. But thank you very much, Dr. West. We appreciate you for coming through. And yeah, we salute and look forward to catching you again. Definitely. Thank you very much.
Stay strong.
Thank you, brother.
All right, peace, everybody. And to everybody out there, thanks again for sticking with us all morning. Thanks again to Dr. West, the whole Remix crew, the whole BPM crew, Sister May in the back, Ear Doctor, everybody, the remixers. We'll catch you next time. I'll be on tomorrow morning with Mamouna Yusuf. You talk about good music, Dr. West. I know you've got to know about Moo Fresh. Mamouna Yusuf. And I didn't do it. We didn't. Oh, man. Look, the Cornell West theory. DC got you covered, man. Shout out to my DC.
Brother Tim Hicks.
Of course. Tim Hicks. Look, man, Tim Hicks, the Cornell West theory. That's me, man. That's we got
I love those brothers.
That is, and the sisters, don't forget the sisters. That's right. And Dr. West, do yourself a favor. You should tune back in tomorrow morning, because DC's own, Baltimore's own as well, Maimuna Yusuf, the baddest songstress, songwriter, and lyricist on the planet.
Yes,
I said it.
Wow.
It's gonna be on live tomorrow at 8 a.m. Check it. Moo Fresh, Maimuna Yusuf. She's a Grammy nominated.
I know I got my boxes. Is it gonna be on internet so I can catch y'all?
It's gonna be on the internet. It's gonna be right here tomorrow morning.
I'm gonna catch it, brother. I'm gonna catch it.
Yeah, do yourself a favor, because music, the politics, this sister is the truth.
Yeah.
Anyway, so but thank you again, Dr.
Smiles
West.
on our faces when we know that the 400-year war against Black people is still dishing out those kind of love warriors and freedom fighters, even of the younger generation. That's shout material.
That's it.
That's right.
There it is.
Right there.
And Dr. West, you should take it as a compliment that these dudes keep trying to rhyme like you all day long, and I got to put up with it. So I just want to let you know that. So,
hey, look here, man.
Here we go.
Look here. I think Dr. West and I need to do an album together. Call it Step Back, Kamau and the Prince Fans. You know what I mean?
Ooh,
yeah, that sounds cold, don't it? Shout out to Curtis Mayfield. You know what I mean? Yeah. Let it be known. Anyway, salute,
Peace,
brother.
Dr. West. Like Fred Hampton, we know you're willing to fight for it. All right, everybody. Take care. Peace, everybody. Catch you next time here at Black Power Media.
Yeah.
Well, there it is. Thank y'all once again for tuning in to Black Power Media. Tomorrow we're gonna have another rerun. That's gonna be one of our BPM specials. So tune in. I check y'all tomorrow. Have a great one. And we out. Peace. Make sure y'all like, subscribe. We out till tomorrow, 8 a.m. to 10 a.m. Peace.